What about the MVP talk is picking up here midway through the season? My requirement personally, and again, another arbitrary thing, you got to be a top 3 team. That's how I feel about it. And we all have, it's very subjective, the criteria. And so I'm leaning SGA, but, Denver's sitting in the 4 spot. But the reality is, let's be honest too, there is some Joker fatigue. And he is having an amazing season. The one thing that I think is overlooked is how SGA defends and setting the tone for that Thunder team. Obviously, they have the horses. They've got Dort. They've got Caruso. They've got guys that are natural defenders. But when your best player defends night to night like that, that's why you're the best defensive team in the league. And I know the godly numbers of Joker, but if OKC closes this season out at 1, I think you got to give it to SGA. That's where I stand. Honestly, though, the more interesting conversation is Luka Doncic is probably never going to win an MVP. I mean, think about it. So he's 25 right now. He turned pro at 16, so he's going on 10 years as a pro. We know he doesn't take care of his body that well. So he's probably smack dab in the middle of prime right now. This is Luka's prime, and he can't even play enough games to qualify for the award. He's turning into Derek Coleman. No, seriously though, I think he's going to have a hard time qualifying year to year, and I also think that his prime is sooner than a lot of guys because he's been a pro since he was 16. And then you combine that with his sloppy lifestyle. You got Wemby on deck. Right? I don't know. Because we all remember it was written like 2 years ago. People were like, well, is Luka going to win 3, 4, 5? I could see the projection, but it's just not playing out that way. And Wemby, man, Wemby's shot contests, particularly out to the 3-point line when he blocks a 3, it's almost like when Steph started pulling up from 30 feet early in the clock in 15, 16, right? Where it was like, what was that? Oh, that looks way different, right? His contests are freakish, man. And I've got to give him credit. Again, sometimes I misjudge the temperament, maybe with Jaden McDaniel, Wemby's temperament, but the foreigners are harder to read, right? But the French guys, they're always confident. But I do think that Wemby, the thing that I don't like the way Wemby plays is he still does way too much to get his shot. He wants to pound, step, split between. Dude, you could just look this way, look that way, and shoot the ball. And at some point, I think he'll figure it out. It'll probably take an injury for him to figure it out. But in more concerning news, is Pop dead? No, I don't mean to be morbid, but and he had a stroke. So, but he's coming back. We just don't hear anything about Pop. It's on some Jamie Foxx Gucci Man shit. When Pop comes back, I think we got to double check if it's Pop. No, prayers out to Gregg Popovich, and the game needs him. I think that this Spurs team, who they have some interim coach, so I don't want to joke too much about that, but my point is it's a little concerning. I guess it's taking this long, but I mean, he's in his 70s and he has a stroke. So I guess maybe take the whole year off, right? So hopefully Pop is back at the start of next season for MVP Wemby. Told you Castle was going to be nice. Remember, we played them early in the year. I was like, yo, this kid has star written all over him. And now the rest of the NBA media is like, yo, Castle. I was like, yeah, I seen that. If you haven't heard, I will be covering the Valkyries' first season in the WNBA. The Warriors WNBA team will be playing this summer and draft and building the team. And I'm excited to do that. But have you seen this unrivaled league for the women's game that's on TNT now? And it's 3-on-3 full court. And my first thought was yo, that is wild. It's not really basketball. But then I started to think about the marketability and what would be the concept of it. Because when you watch the big 3 Ice Cubes, it is pretty rough. It can't get ugly. And so it opens up the game and it allows for the more athletic girls, I think, to shine in the WNBA and the women's game. And so that's an interesting concept because it's almost going to make who is good different. The women's game is played in the half court. It's physical, it's on the ground, and believe it or not, some of the more athleticism is not as much of a prerequisite to play at a high level in the women's game as it is in the men's game. 3-on-3 full court could certainly change that. Angel Reese could be an MVP running up and down. Like it's going to accentuate just a different skill set. And so I'm curious to see how it pans out, even though it kind of doesn't feel like real basketball. But then last night, Alyssa Thomas, who was like second for MVP this year, like she's a perennial all-star for the Washington team, blows her knee out. And so is that going to scare some of these girls from this opportunity? I know they're getting paid probably more than their WNBA salaries, but it was a collision. It was a weird collision where you're like, oh, that's terrible, right? And there's going to be collisions and plays in 3-on-3 full court that these girls and players aren't accustomed to. Just like the speed and the angles that they're going to be played at, coming at each other, it's going to open up the door for some of that stuff. There's a give and a take and a cost for everything, but I like what they're trying. I like that they're trying to think outside of the box. But I think that if it sticks, what you're going to see is girls in that league that are stars that are not necessarily that effective in full court 5-on-5 basketball.